Today, we're diving into the story of one of history's most notorious figures, Adolf Hitler. We're going to look at how he went from a total unknown to the absolute dictator of Germany and track the unbelievable devastation that followed. I mean, it's a question that really sticks with you, right? How does a failed artist, an outsider on the fringes of society, manage to grab total control of a modern, powerful nation? That's the central mystery we're going to unpack here. So, to really get a handle on the dictator, you first have to look at the man before all the power. We need to go back to his early life, his frustrations, and the events that shaped his incredibly dangerous ideology. Right at the heart of his early life, there was this huge conflict. See, his father wanted him to have a safe, stable career as a civil servant, but Adolf, he dreamed of being a famous artist. So he completely rejected his father's plan, only to get rejected himself, twice, in fact, by Vienna's Academy of Fine Arts. And that double rejection, well, it fueled this deep bitterness and sense of being an outcast. He was just drifting in Vienna, and that's when he started soaking up all these anti-Semitic and extreme nationalist ideas that would eventually become the bedrock of his worldview. For this aimless artist, World War I gave him something he was starving for, a purpose. He jumped at the chance to join the German army and served through the whole war. He was even decorated twice for bravery, earning the Iron Cross, an award he would pin to his chest for the rest of his life. For the first time, really, he had an identity. He had a cause. But then Germany lost the war, and that changed everything. Hitler was in a hospital, recovering from a gas attack when he heard the news. He just couldn't accept it. He couldn't believe the army had been beaten on the battlefield. Instead, he grabbed onto this powerful and incredibly dangerous myth, the idea that Germany was stabbed in the back by traitors on the home front. And that one single idea, it would become the absolute cornerstone of his entire political career. So, armed with this profound sense of betrayal, Hitler went back to Munich, which was in total chaos after the war. And it's here that he discovered his true talent wasn't for art, but for riling people up, for political agitation. He soon joined a tiny, unknown nationalist party. Hitler's rise in the party was incredibly fast, and it was really built on three things. First off, his public speaking. The guy was mesmerizing. He could tap right into people's anger and fears. Then you've got his genius for propaganda. He completely rebranded the party and gave it the swastika, a symbol you just couldn't ignore. And finally, and this is key, he wasn't afraid to use brute force. He unleashed his stormtroopers, the SA, to literally beat his political opponents into silence. By 1923, he felt bold enough to make his first big move for power. It was a violent attempt to overthrow the government in Munich, what we now call the Beer Hall Putsch. Now, the coup was a total failure, a disaster, really. He was arrested for treason, but the trial completely backfired on the government. It gave him a national stage to spout his ideas, and it turned him into a hero for right-wing nationalists all over Germany. He ended up serving just 9 months in a surprisingly cushy prison cell, and he used that time to write his political manifesto, Mein Kampf, which means My Struggle. But this wasn't just a memoir. Oh no, it was a chillingly detailed blueprint of his hateful ideology and exactly what he planned to do with Germany. A central idea in the book was the Führer principle, or the leader principle. Hitler basically argued that Germany didn't need democracy. It needed one supreme, all-powerful leader, a Führer, who would embody the true will of the people. This was the ideological justification for the dictatorship he was already planning. And another core idea he laid out was Lebensraum, or a living space. He flat out stated that Germany's destiny was to conquer huge amounts of land in Eastern Europe. This meant violently getting rid of the people who already lived there, who he called inferior Slavic peoples. It was a terrifying justification for the war of conquest he was already dreaming of. After getting out of prison, Hitler changed tactics. He realized he couldn't take power by force. Not yet. Instead, he would use Germany's own democracy against itself, exploiting its weaknesses from the inside. And then, the Great Depression hit, giving him the perfect storm he needed. He completely capitalized on the economic collapse and the political chaos. The Nazi Party grew and grew until it was the largest in Germany. Conservative politicians, thinking they could control him, convinced the aging President Hindenburg to make Hitler chancellor. And on January 30th, 1933, it happened. His 1,000-year Reich had begun. And he wasted absolutely no time. Just a month later, the Reichstag, Germany's parliament building, mysteriously went up in flames. Hitler immediately blamed the communists and used the fire as the perfect excuse to declare a state of emergency. Just like that, civil liberties were suspended, and he launched a brutal crackdown on anyone who dared oppose him. This is the moment German democracy truly died. The Reichstag, under massive intimidation from the Nazis, passed something called the Enabling Act. This law basically handed all lawmaking power over to Hitler and his cabinet. He could now rule by decree, without any checks or balances. He was, for all intents and purposes, a legal dictator. But even that wasn't enough for him. In June 1934, he turned on his own people. During what's known as the Night of the Long Knives, he had hundreds of his rivals inside the Nazi Party itself murdered, including the head of his own stormtroopers, Ernst Röhm. The message this sent was terrifying and crystal clear. Nobody was safe. His power was absolute. With total control locked down at home, Hitler finally turned his eyes outward. He was ready to pursue his long-stated goals of conquering Europe and enacting his horrific plans for racial purification. He was about to plunge the world into war and commit one of the greatest atrocities in all of human history. After annexing Austria and Czechoslovakia without a single shot fired, Hitler set his sights on Poland. On September 1st, 1939, his armies invaded. This time, Britain and France had to draw a line in the sand. They declared war on Germany, and World War II began. Using a terrifying new tactic called Blitzkrieg, lightning war, the Nazi war machine just swept across Europe with unbelievable speed. But the war itself was just a means to an even more horrific end. Fueled by his obsessive, rabid anti-Semitism, Hitler's regime unleashed the Holocaust, the systematic, industrial-scale murder of Europe's Jews. 6 million men, women, and children were killed. And it is so important to remember, the Nazi terror didn't stop with Jewish people. Millions of others were rounded up, tortured, and murdered because they were considered racially inferior or enemies of the state. This included anyone who disagreed with him politically, homosexuals, the Roma people, people with disabilities, and countless others who didn't fit into his twisted vision of a master race. For a while there, Hitler really did seem invincible, but by the end of 1942, things started to change. With major defeats in North Africa and the catastrophic loss at Stalingrad, the tide of the war began to turn, decisively, against him. And the end, when it came fast. The D-Day landings in June 1944 opened up a huge second front in the West. Hitler grew more and more paranoid, even surviving a bomb plot by his own officers. By early 1945, he was a broken man, hiding in a bunker deep beneath Berlin, commanding imaginary armies. As the Soviet troops closed in around him, he married his longtime mistress, Eva Braun. The very next day, April 30th, they both committed suicide. And just a week after that, Germany surrendered. It was over. Hitler's promised 1,000-year Reich collapsed in just 12 years, but not before it left a scar on the world that will never fade. His story is a chilling reminder of just how fragile democracy can be and how quickly hateful ideas can spiral into a global catastrophe. So the question that leaves us with is, what lessons does its long shadow teach us today?